my name is Natalie and I am here today to do a nonfiction book recommendations video. I hope everyone is having a fantastic nonfiction November so far, and today I wanted to bring you a few recommendations for illustrated or graphic nonfiction. Basically, nonfiction books that have a strong illustrative medium to them. I think these are often more accessible to read, especially if you are someone who finds nonfiction intimidating. They are often shorter, they take a shorter time to read, and they are interesting and accessible to read. So I wanted to bring your attention to a few of them and also share a few of the ones that I have on my TBR that I would love to read myself. So if you have any recommendations for me, please let me know in the comments below. So I will be using the prompts to share these recommendations. So first, the prompt of sports. We have Spinning by Tilly Walden, which is a graphic memoir of the author's experiences of figure skating. So she sort of chronicles her entry into figure skating and both her sort of awakening of her sexuality at the same time that she is trying to learn this new thing to perfect her craft in terms of the figure skating. I think it is one of the best graphic memoirs or graphic nonfiction that I've ever read, like comic nonfiction that I've ever read. It is a coming of age story, but it also strongly focuses on the figure skating, of course, the sport aspect of this book. Recommendation, but I think it is fantastic and I would strongly recommend it to everyone, but especially if you're looking for sort of that coming of age and very personal and intimate look into nonfiction in the illustrated form, then this would definitely be a good one to choose. Then we have the challenge True, and for that I've chosen two books that I would like to bring to your attention. First, we have March by John Lewis, Andrew Aydin, and Nate Powell. And this is a graphic novel or a comic series of 3 volumes. I've only read the first one, so that is sort of my basis for this recommendation, but it is fantastic. It is a nonfiction account of the civil rights movement in the US, and it gives you both the personal account of that and also gives you sort of insight into the historical moment and the injustices of the time. I think a lot of people who are not comics readers would enjoy this book. It is very engaging and educational, I think. The other one is not actually a comic. It is called Raqqa Diaries. The pseudonym for this author is Samer, but he's actually an anonymous writer who chronicles his experiences of Syria and living in Syria in a time of political turmoil and unsafety. And this is in part told through his diaries and the text, and in part also told in the form of illustrations. And I think the illustrations are a big part of the book and also a big part of the emotional experience of it. They capture the feeling in a way that makes it a deeper hitting book. So both of these books are great if you're looking for nonfiction books that are about true events that almost seem impossible because of the injustices that they both capture. For the design prompt, I've chosen Cabin Porn, Inspiration for Your Quiet Place Somewhere. It is edited by Zack, Klein. So this is a photography book in a sense, and sort of an anthology of various people talking about their own small houses, cabins, or cottages in the woods. Because it has stories from each of these houses and sort of the design aspect of making these houses, of building them, of deciding where to live and how to live in them. Because of that, I thought that this would be a particularly good book for this challenge, to be able to read something slightly different in terms of nonfiction. But it is beautiful and it will definitely give you inspiration or just a brief sort of escapism for living in the woods or in tree houses. That is definitely my favorite aspect. But I think in terms of the design challenge or prompt, I would especially recommend things like this, coffee table books or photography books with a strong element of the illustrative and the sort of using other mediums because of the design aspect of the prompt. I think lends itself very easily for that. So this is my recommendations for that challenge. And the last prompt for this year's Nonfiction November is voice. And for that I have chosen to recommend Lost Words by Robert Macfarlane and illustrated by Jackie Morris. It is basically several words that are about to go out of the English language, and Robert Macfarlane tries to sort of capture those words through poetry, and they are each illustrated by Jackie Morris. The reason I see this mainly as nonfiction is because these words obviously are real, and the way that he writes about them are also very realistic. So it's in my mind, the poetry is more like mini essays with beautiful writing. So that's why I would recommend this, and I wanted to show you a little bit of it because it's so beautiful. So this is each word has like a big illustration with all of the letters in the word, and then the text. Let's see if I can find something like this, full pages like this. I wanted to recommend this as a slightly different thing to pick up for voice. Obviously it is very strongly related to language. Robert Macfarlane wrote a book called Landmarks, where I think he discusses these words in more depth, so they might be good as a combo to read, but I would strongly recommend this for your nonfiction reading or just in general. It is a stunning book to have, and with beautiful words that you will not want to be lost. And then for my TBR books that I would love to read that are illustrated or comics or what have you. So these are just a few of the ones. Honestly, there's a lot of books that I would love to read that are in this category. So we have How to Be an Astronaut, and I don't have the author's name written down, so obviously I will put pictures here and also write them all below. How to Be an Astronaut is a very recent release. There's been a lot of books this year about space exploration or about the moon landing because of the 50-year anniversary this year of the moon landing. And I think because of that, there's been a ton of books within this category or genre, and a lot of them are specifically targeted towards kids, and this is one of them. It's about obviously how to become an astronaut and what an astronaut does for their work. And books like these I find particularly interesting because I feel like there's a lot of things that I don't know, and I think it would be a nice introduction to the topic and sort of figuring out what parts of a new topic that I want to explore further. Similarly with the moon anniversary, with the moon landing anniversary, last year was the I think 200-year anniversary for Frankenstein being published, and so in connection with that there was a lot of books about Mary Shelley being published, and quite a few picture book biographies of Mary Shelley. Two of them that I am particularly interested in is called She Made a Monster, and the other one is Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein. I think Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein is the one illustrated by Julia Sarda, which is who is an illustrator whose work I love. So that one is particularly high on my list. But in general, I want to collect several books on Mary Shelley, so these are two on my wish list. In connection with that, we have Monster She Wrote, which is published by Quirk Books, and they do a lot of these kind of books with mixing the mediums of writing and illustrations or photographs or what have you. They did one on women in comics that I really enjoyed. I think last year I read it, and this one is about women writing horror or writing gothic things. I've seen a little bit of the inside, and it looks like it's really beautiful, and there's a lot of illustrations going on in it. Mary Shelley I know that they include, but I also think they include Shirley Jackson and other people like that. The last ones are nature related, so we have Around the World in 80 Trees, which is a stunning book. It is on my wish list. It's very expensive and very heavy and like in a really good quality, the publication of it. I had to lower the light in the background a little bit because I was completely blocked out by sun. Anyway, so Around the World in 80 Trees is a beautiful book just talking about several tree species, and it has again a strong illustrative aspect to it. I think it is, like with Cabin Porn, is probably like 50% illustration, 50% text. There's Darwin, an exceptional Voyage, that is published by No Brow, and they do a lot of interesting comic nonfiction, both for kids in terms of picture books and also in terms of like graphic memoirs and graphic biographies and the like. There's also one on Everest, published by one of their imprints, Flying Eye Books, and I think this one is probably more targeted towards kids. But both of these books are books that I'm interested in, and both of these publishers I would highly recommend looking up. They have a lot of beautiful, high quality books within this genre of illustrated or comic nonfiction for all ages. And lastly, we have books by Stephen Moss. So Stephen Moss has done several books on birds. There's one on the wren and one on the robin, and very soon he's coming out with a new one called 12 Birds of Christmas that I am particularly interested in, and that is also on my wish list. And like with the other ones of this kind, he combines the illustrative aspect to the book and the text, and it seems like his books are always quite short and easy to read, but they have been beautifully produced and give you an insight into one individual bird, like with the wren and the robin, but also with the 12 Birds of Christmas, probably something similar, but with a shorter package for each bird. I am particularly interested in them, and I think they could make for really beautiful gifts as well. So those were all of the books that I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Let me know, as I said, if you have any recommendations for me or if you've read any of these books, and hopefully you are having a fantastic nonfiction November, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.